Hi everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel RatherBeReading, and today I'm bringing to you my July marked as to read video. So in case you are new, my marked as to read videos is a series of videos where I just talk about all of the books that I have been inspired to mark as to read on Goodreads. I talk about what the book is, obviously where I heard about it and what it's about and why I'm excited about reading it. So let's jump straight in. In the month of July, I marked, I think 11 or 12? 12. I marked 12 books as to read, so let's jump straight in and talk about all of them. So the first book that I want to talk about is one that I heard about first on a Goodreads blog post. As I always talk about in these videos, I get a lot of book recommendations from the Goodreads blog posts. So if you're looking for book recommendations, I definitely recommend checking out their articles that they put out, because they do talk about a lot of like upcoming releases and things like that that I always find super interesting. So the book that I heard about in that blog post was, did I even say what it was? It was a Goodreads blog post about anticipated July reads. And so the book that I heard about in that blog post that I hadn't heard of before was Three Women by Lisa Taddeo. And this sounds so interesting. It's a non-fiction novel that is supposed to be like feminist in nature, but it basically follows three different women, three different American women, like real American women, and we follow their sex lives. That sounds so interesting because I am a nosy bitch and I want to know everything about everyone. So I just think that sounds very interesting if you're interested in knowing too much about people, which I am. So there's that. The next book is another one that I heard about on a Goodreads blog post. This one was talking about the best YA books of July. And so that one I heard about a book called The Best Lies by Sarah Liu. This is a YA mystery, and the premises sounds super interesting to me. It's about a girl whose boyfriend has been murdered by her best friend. And I think it's just about that story. I think the police are trying to figure out what's going on, but she's trying to figure out what's going on at the same time and why her best friend has done this. That sounds very interesting. The next book, actually, I heard about in a not usual manner. I actually came across this one in an article on Facebook, of all places. I think because it's an Australian book and I'm Australian, so there was an article about it. Because it's a thriller set in Tasmania, which, fun fact about me, I was actually born in Tasmania. It's where my parents were living when I was born. I was born in Hobart, so there's that. And so the little tagline basically that I had about this book that intrigued me was, a lonely widow, a sinister act, a remote mansion with a dark past. That's all I know, but that sounds very, very interesting. Like I said, I don't think I've ever read a book set in Tasmania. And like I said, it is a place where I was born, so there's that. I then read another article that was an article all about books that were being recommended to fans of the My Favorite Murder podcast, which is a podcast that I'm not caught up. I'm like super behind. But I do really love that podcast. It's a true crime, like a comedy true crime podcast. And so this article basically had true crime books being recommended on it. And there were two in there in particular that I was interested in. The first one is called The Spider and the Fly, a reporter, a serial killer, and the meaning of murder. And did I write down the author's name? No, I didn't, because I'm a terrible person, but the cover will be on the screen. So this is a true crime novel, obviously. It's written by a journalist, and from what I understand, it's about the case of, there was this house that police discovered 8 bodies in the attic / basement, and the culprit or the perpetrator was this 27-year-old man. But he was living in the house with his parents and his sister, who apparently had no idea of what was going on. They had no idea they were living with this serial killer who was keeping bodies in the house. And so it's all about that story. And the journalist like uncovering more about that. I believe that she spoke for like 4 years in interviews with this killer in jail. So it just sounds incredibly fascinating. And so I marked that as to read. And the other true crime book that I got from that from that article is called Little Shoes, The Sensational Depression-Era Murders That Became My Family's Secret by Pamela Everett. So this one is about crimes that took place in 1937. I believe it's about 3 little girls who were lured away and then murdered. And the author discovers that there's some connection to her family and family secrets that she has in her own history, and it's looking into those crimes and what happened back then. So again, that just sounded very intriguing. And I was interested in that one. The next book is one that I just heard about. I've seen it going around BookTube a little bit since then, but I first just saw it on Twitter. And I was very intrigued. It's called The 10th Girl by Sarah Faring. It's a YA horror thriller. And basically what it said was a gothic psychological thriller with a killer twist. And I was like, yes, please. And I'm also intrigued about it because it is set in South America at a finishing school. I don't know, that just sounds like a good time. And so I was very interested in that. The next book that I marked as to read is one that I have heard about quite a few times and hadn't necessarily been that interested in. However, then I heard Cece from over at Problems of a Book Nerd talking about it, and she described it as being like Dirty Dancing, but with a bi character. And I was like, Dirty Dancing? Yes, please. Because if you didn't know, Dirty Dancing is one of my favorite movies of all time. And so that was just enough for me. So the book is Small Town Hearts by Lily Vale. I don't really know too much about what it's about. It just seems like a light-hearted, romantic, contemporary. Well, obviously I think the female main character is bi. I think she's got a complicated relationship with her best friend, which again, I do enjoy friendship themes. So like I say, there's nothing that necessarily particularly drew me in except that comparison to Dirty Dancing. I don't know how it compares to Dirty Dancing, but the fact that it was enough for me. And so I marked that as to read. The next book that I marked as true was another one that I heard about in a Goodreads blog post. This one was a blog post about the highest rated YA so far in 2019. And so I was looking at that article, and obviously most of the books in there are books that you'd heard about. There was one that I'd never heard of, and it did sound really interesting, and that is Stepsister by Jennifer Donnelly. This is I don't really know exactly the plot, but it's a Cinderella retelling told from the perspective of one of the evil stepsisters. So, or the ugly stepsisters. Yes, please. Cinderella. We're getting all the fun facts about me in this video. Cinderella was my favorite Disney movie growing up. I don't know why, but it was. I always just, maybe it's like one of the first ones I ever saw, and Cinderella always spoke to my soul, so I'm very interested in that. The next book is one, Giles just knocked the camera over. I apologize. So the next book that I marked as to read, I heard Nicole from A Beautiful Chaos of Books talking about, sorry, the next two. Both of the next two I heard about on Nicole's channel. Both are thrillers. Nicole reads a lot of thrillers, so if you're looking for thriller recommendations, check her out. The first one is You Let Me In by Lucy Clark. And this one I was intrigued about because it's a thriller about a woman who rents out a room in her house to someone, and then shit gets creepy. I don't know, that just sounded like you let me in. Oh, that is just, it just has a very creepy vibe to me. So I was interested in that one. And the other one that she talked about is Do Not Disturb by Claire Douglas. Claire Douglas is an author that I've heard of. I don't think I've read anything by her, but I know I own at least one of her books on my TBR. But anyway, the thing about this one is that it's about a woman who is escaping something in her past, and she moves to take over a guest house in the Welsh Mountains. I'm very interested in that setting. And then the first guest that turns up at this guest house is someone she hasn't seen in 17 years, which brings up things from the past. So again, I love mysteries from the past being solved. It's one of my favorite thriller tropes. And like I said, the Welsh Mountain setting, that sounds great. The next one that I heard about is, I didn't hear about, it's just purely an author like recommendation. I just am interested in it because of the author. So I recently read the All for the Game trilogy by Nora Sakavic, and I really, really did enjoy that trilogy. And so as soon as I finished that, I was like, what else has Nora Sakavic written? Has she written anything else? So I went to her page on Goodreads, and the only other book that she's published, which I think has come out in the last year or so, I think, is called Elysium. And this is very different sounding to her other books because it's an LGBT fantasy. So it's fantasy, which is very different. And then I think it's adult. And it's about a female, the main character is female, I think. And she is in some kind of like a toxic marriage, I think. And she has fused herself to the ley line that runs through their home or something. However, then her husband steals their baby in some way, and the only way for her to get out is through a nightmare. It's like through the nightmare of the ley line or something. I don't know. It sounds very like interesting and kind of intriguing. I'm mainly interested in it because it's by Nora Sakavic, because Nora Sakavic has a way of writing such fantastic characters that just really draw you in to the story. And so I'm interested in reading the other book that she's published, so I marked it as to read. And then the final book that I marked as to read is one that I heard about from Emma over at Drinking by My Shelf. I think I've had books recommended by Emma in like the last 3 or 4 marked as to read videos. So if you guys aren't subscribed to her, you should definitely check her out, because she talks about some really interesting books that I don't hear about anywhere else. So this book is called Malice Afterthought by Frances Ills. So this is a mystery novel, I believe, and it seems to be set at like a garden party or a tennis party or something like that, and we're following a man who, so I think it's supposed to be a tennis party, but everyone is just there to kind of have sex with other people and like is cheating on partners, and there's a lot of like rendezvous and things going on at this party, and we're following a man who has a mistress and he is planning to murder his wife. I don't really know too much about it apart from that, but it sounded very intriguing. Like I said, Emma just always really talks about interesting books, and she made this one sound very interesting. So that's it, you guys. Those are all of the books that I have marked as to read in July. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you've read any of these books, or if you've heard about them and are interested in them, or if you have any other recommendations for me that you think, Karen, I don't know if you've heard about this book, but I think you'd be interested in it, then let me know, because I love clicking that to read button on Goodreads, one of my fave things to do. So I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That is all I have for this video today. Bye guys.